Hello, welcome to our next mod tool tutorial video. I'm Dragon, and today I'm going to tell you about actions and the action editor. Actions are a very important tool giving your player abilities to affect the game and interact with other countries and interacting with independent provinces that have no owner. And in one of the previous videos we have talked about theater actions, but they are a very different type of actions. And today we are going to focus on the action editor here, and I'm going to talk to you about spy, diplomatic, colonization, province, and region actions. So, all actions can be set up here in this actions editor. And as you can see, there are 5 categories of them, and they are very different from each other. And the main difference here is how they can be activated by the player and what their effects are affecting. So, for example, spy actions can be only used when you have the spy in the province, either in your own country or abroad. Spy actions also use special spy points resource that spies have to generate on the province. And spy actions are very flexible because they can affect both foreign countries and your own country. There are also diplomatic actions, which can affect only foreign countries, and they are the primarily way to interact with other countries, to declare wars, to invite them to blocks, to create different pacts of non-aggression or defense pacts. There are also colonization actions, which are the way for the player to interact with provinces that have no owner. And colonization actions are very important when we are going to talk about colonization editor later. There are also province actions, which are simply actions that can be used in your own country or your own province, and region or regional actions that can be used on the whole region. And those actions, regional actions, affect all provinces in the region, but this region have to be unified. So one country has to own all provinces belonging to that region in order to be able to activate regional action. So now, let me set up an example action here. For example, let's set up sample diplomatic action, declaration of war. First of all, you have diplomatic action type category here. And after selecting it, I can create action category, which is of the diplomatic type. And this is our way to organize our actions, because all of them are displayed at the same time during the game. So we want to organize them so that there aren't too many actions at the same time on the screen. And because I am setting up the declaration of war action, I'm going to leave this wars icon here for this category, and I am going to type here offensive actions, so that now this category is called offensive actions. So the player will know what he or she can expect inside that category. And now, after selecting this category, I can click this button Create Action here. And now, after selecting it, I have this action setup here. And there are a lot of details here, so let me scroll down to show you what can we set up in one action. First of all, we can set up the name of our action. So, declaration of war. We can also input the description of our action. And we can also set up here our custom description for success and 3 ways in which an action can fail. And the first failure is just a standard failure. An action has failed without any other consequences. The second type of failure is failure with effects, so with additional consequences. And the third way an action can fail is failure because the action no longer meets its conditions. All of those 3 types of failure can have their own descriptions here. And we can also set up here an icon for our action. War to find wars icon. Underneath our basic display setup, we have implementation time setup. And here we can input a flat value of days that the player is going to wait before an action is implemented. Let's say that we have to implement declaration of war action for 5 days. Here we have a very important ticker, unavailable for UN unrecognized. If a country is unrecognized, and that is this ticker here in the countries editor, it can be prohibited from implementing certain actions. if we enable this sticker here. But I believe every country can declare a war, so I'm going to leave this sticker unchecked. And also, here we have should be hidden ticker. If enabled, this action will be hidden from the player, and it can be later revealed through special effect, like action unlock effect. But again, declaration of war action should be available at all times, so I'm going to leave it visible. Underneath, we have success cooldown and failure cooldown with 2 tickers for all countries. And those settings determine whether, after this action being successful, the player has to wait before implementing this action again. In this case, let's say that after declaring the war, we want the player to wait at least 25 days before next war can be declared. So now I am prohibiting the implementation of this action for 25 days for all countries in the world. And the failure cooldown works the same way, but of course only when the action has failed. Next, we have the cost setup for our action. Here we can input flat and scaled cost in money, action points, all 3 of our resources, investment points, and favor points. And like I've mentioned before, spy actions have their special spy points resource, and diplomatic action can have investment and favor points cost. This is unique for diplomatic actions. For example, colonization actions, province actions, and regional actions only have their costs in money, action points, and resources. So for this simple declaration of war action, I am going to input 10 for money and 100 for action points. And under the costs, we can set up all different effects for this action. First of all, we have visible effects. Those effects will be shown to the player in the action implementation window. We have effects for sender, so for our country, if you are the one who is implementing that action. And we have here country effects and province and country effects. We have effects for 2 countries. So for example, here we should enter our declaration of war effect. And we also have receiver effects, and those effects will be implemented on the province, country, and province and country in which we are performing said action. And similarly, we can set up hidden effects, which will not be visible for the player, and we can set up special failure effects. So when this action fails with additional consequences, those effects will take place. And underneath the effect setup, we have success and failure percent chance, ranging from 0 to 100. If we set it up at 100, this action will never fail. I believe declaration of war is pretty straightforward example, so it should be at 100% of success chance. But if it was a lower percentage, for example 80, we also should set up this failure percent chance for failure effects. So we have 20% of failing this action, and when that happens, this slider here determines what is our chance of implementing those failure effects. So if I'm going to fail my action, I have, for example, 30% of those effects being implemented. And also, each diplomatic action, and this is unique for diplomatic actions, has also this additional slider here, chance for adding favor points. And this slider determines the chance of adding favor points between us and the target country when this action is successful. This happens only when the action is successful. But in this case, let's leave our chance of implementing declaration of war at 100%. That means that this slider has no meaning at all, but we can leave it at 0 to be sure. And we can set up the chance for adding favor points at 0, because declaring war on someone usually does not provide you with favor points. And here you can set up the amount of favor points given if the action is successful. And here you can also set up additional chance increase by spending favor points or investment points. So for example, if this action had 50% chance of success, we could set up here, for example, 40% chance increase by spending 2 favor points. And now the player has the option to spend 2 favor points and to increase his or her chance to implement that action by 40%. So, in total, the success chance of this action would be 90%. And the same works with investment points. So those two sliders are independent and you can easily reach over 100% success chance when setting up those additional chances here. And here, underneath, we have our very important appear and execute condition setup. Each of those buttons opens independent condition setup window, like we have covered before in our conditions video. And here we can set up conditions for the sender country, so the country that is implementing this action, for the target country, and for the target province. Because diplomatic actions are targeting certain specific provinces as well, we can set up specific conditions for those provinces and for the target country. And for example, in this case, we would like to set up the condition that the target country cannot be at war with us, because it wouldn't make sense to declare a war against country with which we already are at war. But what about appear and execute conditions? Well, appear conditions determine whether this action will be visible for the player. So it works similarly to our should be hidden ticker, but appear conditions hide that action only if they are false. If appear conditions are true, this action is visible for the player. And execute conditions determine whether this action can be implemented or not. So we can, for example, decide that this action will always be visible, so there will be no appear conditions. And here in execute conditions, we can quickly set up a condition which will check whether target country is at war with us. And we should use the war against one country condition and choose the human ticker here and leave it at not equal. And now this condition will check whether human country, so us, because only player can implement diplomatic actions, is not at war with the target country. And if that condition is true, we can indeed implement declaration of war action against the target country. For diplomatic actions, we also have this special setting here, behavior of the action implementation window. And here we can choose between two options: instantly show action implementation window or open the province selection window. And if we choose this option, we can decide the target of our province selection and type of the province selection between all provinces or only core provinces, and between selected country, so the target country, our country, or selected block. And those settings are pretty important if we are, for example, trying to acquire a province or acquire a core, or use any other interaction using some of the province and country effects that require us to choose a specific province. But in this case, we are going to leave this setting at instantly show window. And on the bottom of each action setup, we have parties agree and parties agree after lobbying setup. Here we have the list of all our parties, and we can decide whether these parties agree to our declaration of war action. I believe that each party has to be convinced to go to war, so I'm going to uncheck all of those tickers here, but after lobbying, they will happily agree to let us go to war. And this is the basic action setup. You can set up all our action types and specific actions in similar way. And now after playing our country and clicking right mouse button on foreign country, I would see our offensive actions category, and inside I would see our declaration of war action, and I could declare wars on other countries. So as you can see, actions are a very important and robust tool, and you can set them up in many ways, and you can be pretty creative with how you use them. That would be it for our Actions Editor video. Thank you for watching and see you next time.